Girl Walks Home Alone at Night combines mismatched genres in order to make one strange, yet totally encapsulating piece of cinema. Directed by Lily Ampel, this 2014 film subjects its audience to both an adherence to previously established genre tropes and a subversion of expectations. From neo-noir and crime, to romance, horror, and western, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night experiments with conventions and makes for a totally fresh and contemporary take on stylistic choices prompted by cinema tropes. Primarily, I will explore an excerpt from 16 minutes and 30 seconds of the movie to 26 minutes and 22 seconds, which perfectly exemplify this challenging of genre expectations. To preface, however, I will give some indication of the setting. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night takes place in an unknown town in Iran named, quite unsubtly, Bad City. It is a small, fictional town surrounded by drugs, prostitution, and danger. Embracing a neo-noir-inspired visualization, the town exudes the grungy and somber tone expected of an industrial wasteland. Ampel cleverly utilizes the setting of a dingy, crime-ridden ghost town to facilitate the themes and genres of the movie. Are the citizens in danger from a monster skulking the streets? Are our main protagonists outcasts in a town where they don't belong? Or is the town merely a crime syndicate riddled with drugs and degenerates? A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night subverts the audience's expectations of an ordinary vampire movie. Rather than being a sexy seductress or a brooding, terrifying monster, the girl is presented as an ordinary person with values and desires just like anyone else. The scene opens with the titular girl, played by Lily Vaughn, exiting a store on a dark night. She is presented looking somewhat weak, vulnerable, and exposed. The trope of the vulnerable woman is utilized heavily in horror movies. In fact, reviewer Roger Ebert points out that there is a whole subgenre dedicated to the idea of the woman in danger, which used the ideology of a young woman being stalked at night as a focal point of the movie's plot, not dissimilar to what is being hinted at here. This is indicated primarily through a wide shot achieved through an anamorphic lens which exhibits her as minuscule and insignificant when put into conjunction with her surroundings. As she walks down the street, buildings loom over her. The high depth of field makes her seem as though she is only a small part of her towering surroundings. The tonality also contributes to this sense of vulnerability. Ampel expertly utilizes the natural lightings of the girl's environment in order to provoke a sense of eeriness. There is more texture and an increased sense of realism that would not occur by casting ordinary 3-point or more high-key forms of direct lighting. The harsh, hard, chiaroscuro light that reflects upon her as she exits the store unsettles the audience through its cold and somewhat clinical atmosphere, and the dim lighting provided by the streetlights blackens her surrounding environment, making the audience fear the unknown, anticipating a threat in the shadows. The dinginess of the town is also accentuated through its props. A woman of the night stands awaiting business outside of the store and the bin is overflowing with rubbish. In conjunction with the title of the movie, the audience are left awaiting standard horror movie conventions associated with young women walking home alone at night. However, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night plays with genre conventions through the girl being the threat rather than the victim. The costuming of the girl represents a modernized and cultural version of the quintessential vampire. The girl's black shadow casts over her entire body, almost presenting her as a shadow-like figure. This is reminiscent of the shadow scene in the classic horror movie Nosferatu, respecting the ordinary tropes that horror movies provide, but turning it on its head by presenting our protagonist as a young and innocent-looking woman, rather than a looming and terrifying man. In addition to this, Ampel has previously commented that she chose the shadow as a costume because with her arms spread out, it is reminiscent of a bat. The audience follow the girl as she steps into her basement apartment, a nod to the classic vampire's lair. However, it is not the gothic burrow that they have come to expect from a vampire movie, but instead, a new wave manic pixie fantasy. The audience are greeted by a room akin to some sort of teenager's hideaway. The mise-en-scene is not unlike the grungy angst of the indie teen romance genre. The glow of the fairy lights and the kitsch disco ball provides a comforting presence that accentuates the girl's soft femininity. The pop culture memorabilia provides, ironically, a sense of humanity and youth. The sounds of Farah's song Dreamgirl plays, a future synthwave indie rock-inspired melody that speaks volumes about more nuanced aspects of the girl. While watching the scene, the audience almost forgets that the music is diegetic, being presented as though it were a music video. Farah's lyrics, she's just a normal girl, dancing to her favourite song, provide a multifaceted look into the character. The girl is a contradiction of monster and mundanity, right and wrong, moral and immoral. This is also provoked within the movie's colour scheme, the black and white quite literally an indication of this confliction. These values are reflected in the tropes of classical noir films. A book by Winifred Flock points this out, in saying that in the most prominent noir films, there is an indistinguishable sense of subjectivity when it comes to the idea of morality. Her innate primality is showcased in her smooth, mythological movements when it comes to the song, reminiscent of a snake, wherein she says that she wanted the girl's snake, reflecting a comment made by Ample wherein she says she wanted the girl's movements to mirror that of a cobra. This, however, contrasts the intimacy of the film techniques. The camera tracks around her in a POV shot, starting from relatively far away but transforming into a medium close-up. The camera follows her as if it were an omniscient presence. Strong key lighting focuses on her face, giving her a bright appearance, with a low focal point not often seen in darker genres such as horror or thriller. Through this, we are staring directly at her face, getting a clear insight into her expressions. She displays a face of boredom, as though she has completed this monotonous routine many times. These techniques present the girl as ordinary, partaking in a normal routine and activity. However, this routine is in no way normal, once again playing with the audience's interpretations of a traditional vampire. When presented with the character of Saeed, played by Dominic Raines, he plays as an archetypal expression of a criminal or villain, a harsh, grueling persona of toxic machismo, with heavy, crudely drawn tattoos sprawled on his face and body. He plays a clearly discernible antagonist in a movie filled with shady individuals. This is a prevalent theme in the Western genre. During the scene, they are fully entrenched in Saeed's point of view. The camera follows him through a slow-motion tracking shot as he crosses the girl, the sound design emphasizing the howling of the wind, a projection of his front of manliness, to provoke the sense that Saeed is slightly afraid of being out at night, bolstered by the fictional sign implemented as a prop in the movie in the background, warning people of shadow-clad women. When the girl is welcomed to Saeed's home, there is a sense of discomfort in the girl, similar to what Saeed felt when he was where she felt comfortable, outside, in the darkness, melded into the shadows, through her dark shadow and dark makeup. Completely different to Saeed's home, bright and harsh, with a sleek and modern aesthetic. His house is an obvious glorification of the virality and dominance of traditional masculinity, further supported when Saeed lifts weights in an attempt to impress the girl. The deer head and repeated motif of the tigers indicate this stark belief that Saeed, being the dominant and more powerful male, is the predator, and the girl, weak and vulnerable, is the prey. This indicates that when they are in his home, Saeed is in charge. He has power over the girl, figuratively through his status in the town, and literally that he has paid her to be there. The girl is an outcast with ulterior motives, an explicit homage to the Western movie genre. This shot specifically evokes connotations to the classic face-off scene prevalent in many spaghetti westerns, such as Once Upon a Time in the West. Through its close-up and narrow depth of field, the girl is staged to the right so that the background is still observable, providing on-screen space. These techniques allow for detailed examinations of the protagonist's expressions, a preparation for battle. Following this, the music turns from an upbeat electronic rhythm to the whispers of wind, exactly the same as what was shown in the previous scene. The shot lingers, provoking a sense of anticipation and fear from the audience. The camera shakes as Saeed's fear is projected onto the audience, a more pronounced version of what he felt when he was outside. As she bites on his finger, the sound design emphasizes the crunch, eliciting a feeling of disgust and shock from the audience. They almost feel as though it was happening to them. His sobs of pain pierce the ears of the audience and completely shatter his facade of manliness that he had prior. He is no longer the predator, but the prey. Once again, the soundtrack switches this time to an amalgamate of a western ditty and horror movie trumpets, a nod to the girl's vigilante-esque endeavors and primal-like vampire persona, only killing those who are, in a sense, less moral and to an extent, more monstrous than she is. The girl walks through the house as though it were casual, looking through the music and wandering around, reflecting the bored routine of when she was in her home. However, as we know, it is anything but mundane. As the girl exits the house, blood paints her lips as though it were makeup. Cleverly, the poignancy of vivid red blood is lost through the black and white presentation. Therefore, it is not hard to believe that the character of Arash, played by Arash Marandi, completely disregards the fact that she is painted in it. This makes it easier to project their first meeting as a sort of meet-cute, a love letter to classic romance movies. Ampel has described Arash as the Iranian James Dean, with an Americana-like mobility and classical presentation, hair slicked back, in leather jacket, smoking a cigarette. While the whispers of winds play once more, rather than being an indication of danger, it hums, muted in the background, allowing the audience to focus on the characters' actions, staring at one another through a fence, intrigued of who each other are. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night derives from a range of movie genres to not only play with the audience's expectations but also to facilitate a dialogue regarding what we have come to expect with certain character tropes. An ode to the Jim Jarmusch expression of the modern vampire, such as in the film No Lovers Left Alive, the audience subverts the normal presentation of a vampire movie, saturating contemporary cinema. Lily Ann Paul says that a vampire is so many things: serial killer, romantic, historian, drug addict, and whatever the audience perceives this movie to be, it exemplifies cinema's ability to create individualistic expressions of art.